Today I greet you, lords, ladies, and courtiers with a royal good luck and a fancy high five. We have Tudor today from Academy Games and designer Jan Kirschner, and it might be one of the most divisive games I've reviewed here. The main thrust here is that you're aspiring courtiers to the throne of Henry VIII, and you and your fellow players are jockeying for titles which will come and go faster than his wives. There's worker placement and set collection at play here, but the most interesting mechanic by far is the stand-up cardboard hands and full-sized rings. Let me show you what I mean. Just past the box art, we have the aforementioned rule book, which is dense but very clear. And those two sound like they might be opposites, but they're not. There's a lot of information here, but the illustrations go a long way towards making everything much easier. There's also a double-sided player board, which will change depending on how many people are playing in the game. And now we have these player screens, the back of which will show you where the rings are on your hands contribute to additional player powers, but also they're just hands. They're giant three-dimensional hands, which is cool. Past those, we have a ring stand and the plastic rings. Most of these are cut on the edges to allow you to slip them onto your multi-sized fingers as they may be. However, some of them are not. Was this done intentionally? We don't know. We have meeples for every player color, a starting player token, a bag that will house all of the faction tokens, cards and more tokens. I'm going to explain all of these as they work inside the game, but first let's set up for a 3-player game and I'll show you how the game works. Let's get this out of the way right off the top. Yes, the first thing you're going to notice here are the giant hands attached to the player screens. They functionally denote your player color and also give you an immovable place to put your rings, a signifier of just how high your ranking is in King Henry's court. Here's where we find divisive issue number 1. If you'll notice, most of the plastic rings in the game are cut on the band to allow a little bit of flexibility when putting them on. However, the width of the cardboard fingers is static, so these aren't necessary. Unless you're supposed to put them on your own fingers, or at least so saith both Megan and my wife. I'm team manufacturing issue. These are clearly not designed to go on your game playing hands. You'd have to keep referring to their positioning in an awkward way as you have your palm facing you and then comparing that to the back of the screen. There's clearly two camps here, but I think we all know the right one to be in. You'll start the game, as reflected correctly here on J.B. Pruitt's hand, with 2 rings of your choice of color. While the color of the rings doesn't matter, you'll often get a card to go along with your new jewelry, and those very much do. Each round of the game has 5 phases, and each round begins by welcoming a new queen. The game even provides the year of her coronation right on the board, which is a nice educational touch. You'll start by placing your courtiers on the benches outside of these audience chambers. Once everyone has placed the denoted number of courtiers on the blue scenario card, then the doors to the chamber will open and your courtiers will take their places at the table. It's important to note that space at the table is strictly limited thanks to the patriarchy, so new arrivals will push out the old guard. Once that's done, phase 3 allows each player to place their lord token on the right-hand side of the table. While courtiers seated during the action phase will grant their player either of the table's 2 actions, lords give both, so choosing which table you're going to sit at, just like in middle school, super duper important. Once everyone's seated, we can begin. The object of the game is to move up high enough in the courtroom to claim a title and place a new piece of bling on your hand. There are faction tokens as well as these black and white intrigue and influence tokens in the court, which you'll pick up as you move around. The former square tokens provide endgame scoring and collecting sets. The latter round tokens serve as currency to perform in-game actions, while secondarily providing minimal player points at the game's end. Now's a good time to mention the fact that these red, green, and blue cards on the board are chosen during setup and drastically change how the game is played. The blue cards dictate how influence and intrigue tokens can be spent, how many courtiers are placed on the benches, and even how many rounds there'll be in the game. The red and green scoring cards show you how to score prestige in the game and when you'll score it. That's sort of a lot to take in, so let me break it down for you. Tudor is a game about set collection and worker placement. There's minimal point salad here, so everyone's working in the same realm. It's super fun to collect a ton of these cards and then use this table action here to rocket your courtier 7 spaces to the top of a column, collecting a title and a ring, and then using the ring bonus in the back of your hand to make specific actions you take later on even better. What's less fun is cracking the code of this game for players who don't click with it right away. There's a great game in here, but it's just a little bit hidden under a layer of confusing fiddliness. Misplanning how you set up your courtiers on the bench outside can ruin you for a whole round, and maybe longer as you struggle to recover from a mistake. The game itself is punishing for players who get knocked out of a room. There's secondary actions over here that you get to take if you end up with fewer courtiers than your friends, but they're not nearly as good. Focusing on maximizing your efforts in the chambers is priority number one. I don't want to scare anyone off this title though. The game here is really tasty with lots to think about and a wonderful amount of player interaction. The rings and hands are wacky fun with just enough oomph to warrant paying close attention to them. In my opinion, Tudor hides pretty tight decision making and strategy under just a hair too much frippery. Still, if you can crack that layer, it's totally worth it. So, here we have a game that's physically dominated by an ostentatious board and these three-dimensional player screens adorned by giant hands. It's almost criminal that there's anything else to discuss, but here we are. The checklist awaits. In the box, rulebook clear and non-gender pronouns. The rulebook is dense, but has lots of very clear examples throughout that make things much easier to understand. You'll often find yourself confused by the language of a rule or mechanic, but helpfully find an illustration right next door. The rulebook also uses non-gendered language throughout. Iconography clear. The game's tables use shorthand illustrations for the player actions, and the player screens do the same. Once you understand the language, they're very clear, but that won't help you learn the game for your first play. There's a slight barrier to entry here, but it's not bad. Packaging well done. The game's box does a fantastic job of housing everything in place, even the game's cardboard ring stand. It's clear where everything is supposed to go, and cleanup is a breeze. On the table, good representation. The hands do a decent job of staying non-gendered, and with period-appropriate sleeves, they could literally be attached to anyone. While the rounds are signified by Henry's wives being summarily replaced, you don't actually get into their executions, you're just replacing their portraits hanging in the hall. I'm sure they're fine. They're going to a farm to be happy with all the other wives. Component quality. Whether or not you believe the cut bands on the rings are intentional or not, the rest of the game looks great on the table. The board is colorful and attractive, though a bit noisy for my eye. Wooden pieces are always welcome, and the cards are of decent thickness. Overall, it will hold up to many plays. Replay value. High. The in and end game scoring cards, as previously mentioned, can be changed out from game to game, allowing a good amount of variety in the table experience. These actually provide a pretty good variance in gameplay, so there's plenty inside the box. Fun to lose. While you'll accumulate points throughout the game, the majority of your score will be tallied after the game ends. It's not transparent who's winning at any given point in the game, allowing each player to focus their efforts on trying to maximize their actions without feeling like they're too far behind to do any good. Losing at the end by a point, or by a few dozen points, or more, Megan, is left until the final reveal, so you won't have very long to feel bad. In closing, Tudor is a chess-like experience that hiding inside the box that these ridiculous hands that, let me be clear, are wacky in the most fun way possible. Whether you use them or your own hands, it's a super fun and thematic mechanic that elevates the game above its more cerebral roots. There's plenty to like here, and lots to chew on. Don't let this one fool you. With modular scoring options and fantastic player interaction, Tudor from Academy Games deserves its place in history. I'm Nicholas, reminding you to help protect the game population. Always leave your cards. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed that video, please hit that sub button and check out all of our other offerings at goodluckhighfive.com. And please consider becoming a patron of the channel at patreon.com/GLHFmagic and help us keep making reviews, videos, and podcasts for as little as $5 a month. We're also always looking for new games to review, so if you make games or you know a company who does and wants to have their game reviewed on Good Luck High Five, please reach out to us at glhf@goodluckhighfive.com and we'd be happy to take a look. You can follow me, Captain N the Game Master, on Twitter and Instagram at CaptainNGM, and follow the channel at GLHF Magic. Remember, please shop at your local game store whenever possible. Until next time, I'm Nicholas, and good luck, high five.